Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you've been working with AI coding assistants, you already know they bring an unbelievable amount of speed to the table. But you also know the absolute friction of spinning up a new session and having to repeat all of your project's unwritten rules over and over again. It's exhausting, right? Well, today we're diving into a literal game changer that permanently solves this repetition, the Claude.md file. By the time we wrap up here, you're going to know exactly how to transform the simple Markdown file into the ultimate AI onboarding manual. Okay, let's take a super quick look at our playbook for today. We're going to cover the context memory problem, the Claude.md solution, setting up your file, writing effective instructions, avoiding README bloat, and finally, advanced configuration layers. Let's jump right in. Section 1, the context memory problem. Seriously, are you tired of answering the exact same setup questions every time you start a new coding session? Because that struggle against the token-wasting monster of a blank slate context window is incredibly real. Sure, a codebase tells Claude what currently exists, but it doesn't explain the why. It doesn't explain why the project works a certain way or which weird architectural decisions you made on purpose. Every time Claude Code starts up, it begins with a fresh memory. It doesn't have access to the rich back-and-forth discussions or the boundaries you set yesterday. So what does it do? It inspects the repo and tries to guess your conventions. And that forces the AI to waste precious time and tokens rediscovering information you already know and could have just handed to it on a silver platter. And honestly, the cost of that blank slate is massive. Without a configuration file, the AI is literally just left out in the cold to infer context. Not only are you burning through tokens, but in larger, complex projects, Claude might actually arrive at a completely different conclusion just depending on which files it happens to scan first. There's no consistency. But when you drop in a dedicated configuration file, you establish a single source of truth. You get immediate alignment. If you tell it your project uses pnpm or that a legacy directory should absolutely never be touched, Claude doesn't have to guess. You skip the setup and get straight into deep, focused work. Section 2, the Claude.md solution. So, what is this magic fix? Claude.md is simply a Markdown file sitting right in the root of your repository. But functionally, it acts exactly like an AI onboarding manual. Think about it. When a new human dev joins your team, you don't just point them at the code and say, good luck. They need an onboarding document to figure out the team's quirks and unwritten rules, those subtle whys and hows that are totally invisible just by staring at a code block. Claude Code relies on this exact same concept. It automatically loads this file at the very beginning of every single session, and it keeps those specific instructions pinned right alongside your current conversation. Section 3, setting up your file. Getting this going is incredibly straightforward. Step 1, you just run the /init command directly inside Claude Code. And what's really cool about this command is that it smartly analyzes your project and generates a starting file for you, pulling in the build commands, testing instructions, and conventions it can immediately spot. Oh, and if your repo already happens to have a file, it suggests changes instead of just aggressively overwriting your stuff. Step 2 is where you do the heavy lifting, manually adding those custom, specific decisions that the AI simply cannot infer from the code alone. Finally, step 3, run /context and check the memory file section. If you see your Markdown file sitting there, you're golden. It's successfully loaded into the AI's memory. Section 4, writing effective instructions. Now, how you organize this information is absolutely crucial. You want to group related instructions under clear Markdown headings. For example, have a commands section where you explicitly say, use pnpm instead of npm. Then maybe a project structure section dictating that all reusable components belong in the src/components folder. And definitely a working rules section with boundaries like ask me before you install another dependency. Using Markdown headings makes this document highly scannable, not just for you, but for the AI, and prevents it from turning into one massive, unreadable wall of text. And listen, this is where a lot of developers completely drop the ball using vague platitudes. Telling an advanced AI to write clean code or test properly is totally useless. It leaves the AI to guess what those highly subjective phrases mean in your specific brain. Instead, you need action-oriented directives. Give it hard rules like use named exports or run pnpm test before completing any task. You want to leave literally zero room for the AI to misinterpret what you want. Section 5, avoiding README bloat. 200. I want you to keep this number in your head. Anthropic recommends treating 200 lines as a strict upper limit for this file. I know, it's super tempting to just dump every single piece of project lore into this document, but remember, you are taking up precious context window space. If your file starts creeping way beyond 200 lines, you're probably overwhelming the system with noise it doesn't actually need prioritized. Which brings us nicely to the not a README rule. Please, whatever you do, do not stuff this file with things Claude can easily figure out on its own. Do not copy and paste your README, skip the giant lists of dependencies, and leave out the exhaustive directory maps. Why? Because Claude is perfectly capable of discovering all those basics just by looking around the repository. Stuffing this config file with redundant fluff wastes context space and totally waters down the actual unwritten rules that the AI needs your help to understand. Section 6, Advanced Configuration Layers. Okay, so as you scale this up, the system actually builds a brilliantly flexible hierarchy for managing different scopes. At the top level, you've got your standard CLAUDE.md file. That's project-wide. It gets committed to version control and shared with your whole team. But what if you have your own personal workflow quirks? That's where the claude.local.md file comes in. You drop your individual rules in there, add it to your .gitignore, and you're set. And finally, for rules you want applied across every single project on your machine, like, say, always asking before running a destructive command, you can use a global file sitting right in your users.claude directory. It is a seamless way to balance team-wide standards with your own personal developer habits. But, and this is a massive warning, you have to be incredibly mindful of contradictory rules. Claude Code does not treat one file as a replacement for another. Actually, it combines the instructions from all of these layers together. So if your global file aggressively demands tabs, but your team's project file demands 2 spaces, Claude is going to be confused and will just choose unpredictably. You've got to make sure your personal rules aren't picking fights with your project's shared manual. So we've walked through how the CLAUDE.md file acts as the ultimate AI onboarding manual, completely curing context amnesia and saving you a ridiculous amount of time and tokens. So I'm going to leave you with this thought. If you could permanently automate one repetitive setup task in your AI workflow starting right now, what rule would you write into your new configuration file first? I challenge you to open your terminal, run that initialization command today, and get your AI perfectly aligned on your terms. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy coding.